Hello, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, Israel prays for former Israeli President Shimon Peres. Tensions are higher than ever in the Golan Heights, and Israeli scientists may have found an unlikely energy alternative to oil. I'm Natasha Kirchuk here with the latest news in Israel. We open with some hopeful news. Former Israeli President Shimon Peres has regained consciousness after suffering from a stroke last night. Although the beloved Israeli leader has likely suffered serious damage to his brain, he's showing signs of improvement and is even responding to speech. I headed over to the hospital in Tel Aviv where he's being treated. I'm here standing in front of the Heart Center at the Sheba Medical Center in Tel Aviv, where doctors are working around the clock to treat former Israeli President Shimon Peres. The Israeli statesman suffered a stroke last night and is currently in critical but stable condition. The 93-year-old leader served as both president and prime minister and former chief of the Labor Party here in Israel. He's served in the government for over 7 decades, and he's currently in an induced coma. Doctors say he's breathing on a respirator.
Thankfully, the process has stabilized, and he regained consciousness. So we look and assess him on an hourly basis. And regaining of consciousness is the first and crucial part of regaining function.
Just last January, Peres underwent a minor cardiac surgery. It was successful after he experienced a small heart attack. Yesterday morning, he woke up with intensive breathing problems, came here to this hospital to complain, and later experienced a stroke, which led to internal bleeding in his brain.
He's intubated and ventilated and sedated. While we stop sedation, he understands us and he obeys commands, so that's the way we know that there is a cognitive process which involves also motor function, understanding and then obeying what we are asking him to do, to lift up his arm, to show us 2 fingers and so forth.
As you can see right behind me, there's a long line of cameras, international news agencies based here in Israel that are all waiting for the latest news about the former Israeli President Shimon Peres. Peres is a beloved Israeli leader. He's been serving in the government for the last 7 decades, both as president, prime minister, and everybody just wants to know if he's going to be okay.
אני מעריצה את פרץ, אני אוהבת אותו, וחבל לנו להפסיד איש גדול שעשה למען המדינה, למען כולם, איש דגול, איש צלול, שאוהבים אותו בכל העולם.
We are cautiously optimistic and hope for the best.
Just hours before Peres was submitted to the hospital, he recorded a special video online showing his famous pride for Israel and the Israeli people.
אני ממליץ לכולנו, לכולכם, לקנות מוצרים ישראלים כחול לבן. לא רק מפני שזה יותר פטריוטי, אלא פשוט מפני שזה יהיה יותר טוב. אתם יכולים לתאר לעצמכם ארוחה בלי סלט ישראלי. אפשר לערוך את השולחן בלי פירות ישראלים. יש בארץ 350 חברות זרות שמשקיעות כאן. הם באו לכאן, אנחנו כאן. למה הם באו? כדי שהמוצרים שלנו יש שם יוצא מן הכלל. על כן, מה שטוב להם גם טוב לנו, והתיטיבו לעשות. אם תגידו לייק ותוצרת ישראל.
We can only hope that former Israeli Prime Minister Shimon Peres is able to recover and rise above his health issues and continue to lead Israel on a path towards peace and success. This is Natasha Kirchuk reporting for ILTV. Joining us now on the phone is Yolanda Lee, who served for years as one of the closest advisors to former Israeli President Shimon Peres. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you and good evening.
Now tell us, was this expected in any way?
I'm not an expert, but I can tell you that I met the president the night before at his residence, and he was 100% okay. We have a debate about the future war, the future status of Israel, about high tech, and etc. And he was 100% okay in my opinion.
As someone who's very close to the president, what was it like, that last interaction with him? You tell us you were with him the night before.
No, we are meeting once in 2 weeks, 3 weeks. A small group of old friends of him, 5, 6 people, and we always are listening to him, to his overview about the situation around the globe and in Israel. And till now, in the last, I think, 10, 15 years, there was never a leak of a piece of information from it, and I'm not going to change it.
Amazing. Now, he's 93 years old. He is a fighter, an absolute fighter. Do you think he's going to be able to get back onto his feet?
While I worked with him for the last 25 years, always, he was an optimist and I was a pessimist. That was the interaction between us. But now I'm an optimist, and I hope, I pray, I wish that he will recover and we will see him and listen to his wisdom among us for many more years.
We can only hope that Peres will get back on his feet and continue to spread the wisdom that he's been spreading over the last 7 decades as president, prime minister, former chief of the Labor Party. Thank you so much, Yoram.
Thank you very much, and good night.
Tensions remain very high on the Israeli side of the Golan Heights today, following the overnight launching of airstrikes by Israeli warplanes against Syrian military targets, all in retaliation for 3 mortars fired from the Arab Republic that exploded in Israeli territory earlier yesterday. Arab media is reporting that anti-aircraft batteries manned by the loyalist forces of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad fired at the Israeli jets as they made their attack runs, but they scored no hits. Syrian sources later claimed to have shot down an IDF Air Force plane, which was later disproven. A nationwide ceasefire in Syria was declared Monday evening in the second attempt this year by Washington and Moscow mediators to bring the 5-year-old civil war to a halt. While Israeli residents in the north are concerned, few believe the current friction between Israel and Syria will spark a wider conflict. But they don't necessarily believe the Syrian ceasefire will hold.
I don't think we're going to see an escalation, but that's a result of the backing and the support that the Russians and the Iranians give to the Assad regime. And what we had lately, we have battles on the border that sometimes cross the border to Israel. Some of the ammunitions cross the border to the Israeli territory. That's why Israel responds again and again. I don't think the incident that we had last night is going to change dramatically the situation. We had the ceasefire since last night, and I doubt if it's going to work. I hope, it's going to work, but I doubt it's going to work.
The latest exchange between Israel and Syria comes less than 24 hours after a similar cycle of violence. According to a military spokeswoman, Israel's latest strike was a 4th retaliation for stray mortar fire since September 4th.
לא מאמין שיהיה פה חימום האזור כאן אצלנו, כי בכל זאת סוריה שסועה, קרועה, לא נראה על פניו שהיא תיכנס איתנו לעימות. אנחנו מתפללים שבאמת יהיה שם שקט. כל ילד שמת, כל אישה איך אומרים, מתה מפצעים, זה פשוט, לנו לא פשוט. אנחנו מרחמים עליהם ממש מכאן, מרחוק.
One local resident named Yehuda Avraham also says he doesn't believe Damascus intends to ignite a confrontation with Israel. He went on to express his hopes the current ceasefire will endure, and said that Israelis feel very sorry about the deaths of so many innocent women and children in Syria. It's very hard for us, he says, and we pray for true peace over there. Israel has just sent its latest reconnaissance satellite into orbit, but there have been initial reports that there may already be some difficulties aboard the spacecraft. The OFEC satellite blasted off from the central Palmachim Air Force Base near the Mediterranean coast, just south of Tel Aviv. It's the 11th in the OFEC series, which means horizon in Hebrew. The satellite is an upgraded version of the previous 2014 model and will continue to provide intelligence to Israeli security forces. A Shavit rocket, meaning comet, was specifically designed to ship the Israeli aerospace industry's satellite into the galaxy. Officials say the Jewish nation's intergalactic spy program is particularly focused on gathering intel on nuclear development in Iran, as well as Tehran's support of terrorist factions operating in neighboring Arab countries. Concerns have already been raised, though, following local press reports right after OFEC 11 shot into space, that some troubles were detected in the satellite systems, which are being looked into by the Defense Ministry. This comes at a sensitive time for the Israeli aerospace industry because less than 2 weeks ago the civilian Amo-6 communication satellite was destroyed when the SpaceX rocket carrying it exploded on a launch pad in Cape Carnival, Florida. Over 75% of Jewish students in the United States have experienced or witnessed anti-Semitic or anti-Israel acts, and the situation isn't getting any better. Joining us in the studio today is Aviva Slomich, the International Campus Director of the Committee for Accuracy in Middle East Reporting in America. Aviva is responsible for assisting college students address Israel-related hostility. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you, Natasha.
So the school year just started and thousands of Jewish students will be going to campus for the first time. What should they be expecting?
Well, it's very interesting that you asked that question because at one point, as you said, that we've seen an increase in anti-Semitic attacks and anti-Israel hostility on campuses. We've also seen an increase in pro-Israel activity on campuses. But what we saw just a few weeks ago, a couple of articles were published by students from very prestigious universities in Canada, at McGill University, and at Brown University, an Ivy League in America, addressing these exact concerns, warning students, Zionist activists specifically, that they will come across abuse, targeting, intimidation because of their the beliefs that they hold for Israel, and that they're warning them. They're also, pushing them up and empowering them to continue to support Israel and to support their rights as a Jewish people. But I find it very interesting that not, from really prestigious universities, these warnings these students are experiencing these serious issues.
So, there's a long debate about the line between anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism. From your experience, does this line exist? And if so, is it changing?
From our experience, absolutely, it is changing. There was, people could argue that there was a line that existed between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. There was a point where the extreme anti-Israel activists, such as Students for Justice in Palestine, seemed as though they were only targeting Israeli supporters and were only targeting Israel as a country. Now, in that itself, you could argue is anti-Semitism because some of their concerns were right of return for Jewish people for Israel, and they weren't concerned about this where the same right occurs in other countries in Europe, for instance. So that in itself can be anti-Semitism because it's attacking the only Jewish state for something that it is neglectfully challenging other countries for. However, we saw in about spring 2014, University of Michigan, where anti-Israel rhetoric and propaganda really crossed the line to anti-Semitism. In the spring of 2014 of Michigan, there was a BDS petition. It did not pass. And SAFE, the very extremist anti-Israel organization on the campus, had riots and protests outside the student government and student unions. And while they're chanting, and also their harassment of student government members who decide to not vote for the BDS petition, they're referring to them as dirty Jews and kikes. So, and this clearly has nothing to do with Israel. And then from then on, we saw in the fall of 2015, spring of 2015, where Jewish students who are running for student government positions at UCLA, at UC Santa Cruz, were at Stanford, were specifically asked how their Jewish identity would impact their vote on BDS. Nothing about Israel. They didn't know if they supported the country or not, their Jewish identity.
So it's interesting what you say, because I myself went to a college in the United States, and I had a lot of struggles with my Jewish identity and how that related to supporting Israel. Groups like Students for Justice on Palestine made me question, can I be pro-Israel and pro-Palestinian and pro-peace at the same time, or are those all separate things that don't coincide with one another? What's your opinion on that?
To be honest, if you ask probably the most average Israeli activists, they are pro-Israel, they are pro-Palestinian, they are pro-peace. They are here to support Israel as a country because they support the ideas, they feel connected, they have family there, they feel that this is a home for them. But they also support it for a number of other reasons, including its liberal values and democracy. And they want to find a solution to the conflict. They don't want to see the Palestinians as enemies. I mean, we bring speakers to campus, such as Basamid. He's a Palestinian activist. He speaks out because he is against the boycott, divestment, sanctions movement. He sees this as something that is hurtful and detrimental to the Palestinian people. And he wants to see peace come to the land. On contrast, Students for Justice in Palestine and their allies, we have yet to come across an actual organization that is run by students that has a Palestinian name in it, that's actually pro-Palestinian and not just anti-Israel. Them, spilling out these or disseminating this false image of Israel as an apartheid state, despite the polls showing that Palestinians would even rather live in Israel. Even their Palestinian country is created because of the rights and benefits they receive in the country. They're ignoring this. They don't care. I mean, they're just here. They want to see. They really want to see Israel destroyed, and there's two different lengths.
Absolutely.
But the supporters of BDS, Omar Barghouti, those who are really behind that movement, and many of the SJP and groups on campus are, the primary goal is for Israel not to exist as a Jewish state. The Palestinians and everyone else, who will get left, and what happens if, God forbid, that were to occur, it's not a concern.
Yeah, I think before I went to college, I always believed that you could be both pro-Israel and pro-Palestinian. Then I was confronted in a lot of situations where being pro-Israel meant I was cornered and I wasn't allowed to be pro-Palestinian. But to be pro-peace, you have to be able to understand both sides of this issue, which is something that I think often gets lost in, college, campus dialogue, unfortunately. So, do you think that there's a double standard when it comes to addressing discrimination against Jewish students on campuses versus discrimination against, minority groups on campuses?
I think there's definitely a double standard. There's an issue, and especially in the U.S. right now, Jews are not seen so much as a minority anymore. They're seen as white privilege. There's this one student, I believe he went to Princeton University, he wrote an excellent article all about his white privilege. He was a Jewish student. He spoke about his family surviving the Holocaust and coming to America and having to start all over, and all kinds of different experiences that he went through. Sarcastically, this is his white privilege. In addition to that, the New York Times just published an article about how universities all over, especially in the U.S., but I've seen it elsewhere in Europe as well, are almost coddling college students, making them so like you said, overly sensitive, making sure that they feel completely comfortable and careful, and they don't have to go to certain classes or hear certain speakers if they have their opinion might hurt them, which sounds a little too much to me. It's the whole point of college. But one of the campuses they highlighted was Clark University, which is a small liberal arts school in Worcester, Massachusetts. Why I bring this up? Well, last year, this same university had a very big event on campus. All the students and administration and professors were there to speak about racism. And students were permitted to each share their experiences. Obviously, not everyone. It's a large crowd of people, but some people could raise their hand and share their experiences about different examples of racism that they've had against them, or racist attacks. And one student, she wasn't there. She had submitted something, and a professor had read it for her because she wasn't able to attend. She said, "I'm a Jewish student, and I feel uncomfortable on campus. I feel like I've had an anti-Semitic. I've come across anti-Semitic attacks. I've had people, say things that are on the line of anti-Semitism towards me because I support Israel, and so on." So as soon as she said that, the crowd started booing. And this is supposed to be like a place, you know, a safe space, as they sometimes refer to them now, as a, you know, place for anyone to talk and address their concerns. They started booing this woman. Professor said nothing, and then someone else stood up and talked about how they're from Gaza and what's happened to her family because of Israel, which is, you know, a horrible country, and so on. And she got applause. You know, she was applauded for what she said. Professors, no one said anything. Administration didn't say anything. Moving forward, one of our students on the campus ended up writing an article about it and getting it published in a Boston Jewish paper. So it got some news and it was exposed. So the administration eventually, you know, had to have some sit-downs. But it's absurd. It's a perfect example of showing you that basically everybody is safe except for Jews and Zionists. They're kind of fair game.
It's interesting. It's very interesting. So now, how is Camera supporting students in dealing with these situations?
Well, thank you for that question. I'd be gladly to tell you what we've been doing. Camera is an apolitical organization, and we were founded in 1982. Its primary goal is to ensure that the media is accurately portraying Israel, and we've grown so that we've reached farther than the U.S. now. We're also we have a department, Revista de Medio Oriente, that follows the Spanish media. UK Media Watch, BBC Watch follows the English media. We also have Perspectiva, right, in Israel, which follows both the media in Hebrew and in English. But we've been working on campuses, you know, as early as the 90s. We had a Camera on Campus magazine that we would put out, publish works from students and professors and researchers of our own, kind of documenting the issues that we were seeing on campus. And then around 2005, we started programs where we had actual student representatives on campus. And in 2011, we started a program where we helped students create pro-Israel organizations on campus. So what we're doing is that we're helping to ensure students that they're confident, that they know that they're on the right side of history, that they have the facts on their side, that they should feel proud, just like any other people would, to be on campus, to have a club, and to educate others. And we're there definitely a lot as mentors and to give moral support, but we also have our whole team of researchers that are, you know, giving them, you hear there's Jewish-only roads, well, here's a video that we took in Israel showing that nothing like that exists, and you know, really being able to get right down to the lies and correct them.
Provide the facts so that people can feel strong and steadfast in their identity, right?
Right. And we, just this last summer, we had our largest conference yet. About 84 students came from over nearly 70 universities, US, Canada, England, Scotland, and Israel. So we started working with Israeli students too, which is very exciting because here in Israel, they follow it, but it's a lot different to follow it than to actually, you know, meet the students outside of Israel who are standing up for their country. So it was wonderful. They got to meet, and all meet in Boston, and they, you know, they learned various ranges from how to reach liberal students on campus, hearing from their own peers from various campuses, to op-ed writing, to how to stand up and debate and present your case. So it was a very exciting 4-day conference for us.
Well, I'm sure that I could have used that type of support when I was in college myself. Thank you so much for coming in, Aviva.
Thank you so much for having me.
The whole world complains about dependency on oil, but Israeli scientists are actually doing something about it. Researchers in Tel Aviv are now proposing a means of alternative energy from a highly unlikely source, engineered algae. Hydrogen has long been considered to be the fuel of the future, and a team from Tel Aviv University says they developed a way to produce it with that slimy green stuff most of us think of when we hear the word algae. They've also come up with a way to genetically alter the organism so its output can be magnified to be 5 times higher. This hypercreated hydrogen would signal a huge breakthrough, because it's clean energy that can be mass-produced at inexpensive rates, capable of meeting not only our transportation but also industrial needs. Until now, the chemical could only be derived from sources like natural gas, which is highly toxic and anything but green. The previous methods also require electricity, which makes them energy inefficient. The Israeli process is the only agricultural option ever found to make the coveted substance, and it's based on the natural photosynthesis process by which algae, plants, and other organisms convert light energy into chemical energy. By the way, hydrogen is considered vastly superior to the use of biofuels like petroleum, because its only emission is water vapor instead of unhealthy carbons. And it turns out Israelis have made another revolutionary discovery, that single-celled algae produce hydrogen all day long, countering the 1 Don microburst held true by the scientific world until now. The Israeli technique is estimated to cost about $3 for a kilo of hydrogen. That's the equivalent to about 10 liters of gasoline, and we all know how much that costs. But best of all, we could all financially break free from the negative aspects associated with our addiction to fossil fuels, including political considerations in the Middle East. And now for our Hebrew word of the day. They say the formula for success is to rise early, work hard, and strike oil. So today's word is shemen, which means oil in Hebrew. Shemen refers to a lot more than just oil. It can also mean ointment, fat, cream, and fertility. The words may not sound related to one another, but the word shemen is actually supposed to come from the Latin word semen, which means seed. It kind of makes sense since oil is like the fruit of the land. It's a staple that sustains us. That's at least a fact here in Israel, where it's practically impossible to find food that isn't accompanied by shemen zait or olive oil. In the Middle East, both Jews and Arabs alike believe deeply in the power of shemen to not only make your meals more delicious, but to also fix common ailments. Throughout time, shemen has been considered to have lots of magical medicinal powers. It can protect you from heart disease, fix a scratchy throat, and even be used as lip balm. So although people may use a phrase כמו shemen v'mayim, or like oil and water, to refer to two things that don't get along, maybe shemen shouldn't be included in the saying, because if you want to stay healthy, you should mix it into most of your meals. Let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. The weekend is just around the corner. Thursday is expected to be sunny with a high of 87 degrees. The sun should stay out through Friday, with the temperature dropping down to 86. All right, everybody, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.79 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv, and don't forget to check out our next update at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Thanks for watching, and see you tonight.